been crafting stories around the theme Untold, stories of struggle, transformation, and triumph. We actually had 10 storytellers, and unfortunately one is ill, so I'll send our love to Lance and hope that he feels better. You are going to hear some very beautiful stories. You also may hear some things that may feel disturbing to you. We are going to honor the principles of LACE, love, authenticity, courage, and empathy. The storytellers have put tremendous amounts of authenticity and courage into sharing these stories with you, and we are going to be listening with love and empathy. So this evening we're going to hear next a few remarks from Melissa Scholes, who is the wife of University President Carl Scholes. So let's welcome Melissa.
He was really excited to come, so sorry he can't be here. He was particularly enthusiastic about this event, both because of what he's heard about it and how powerful it is, but also because of how directly it ties into his focus on creating a campus of flourishing at the University of Oregon. So, in his words, flourishing encapsulates the holistic development and thriving of every individual within our diverse community. It goes beyond academic achievements and encompasses mindfulness, personal growth, resilience, community, and a sense of purpose. Sharing personal stories, expressing our true and whole selves, and being embraced for who we are, these are key to flourishing. Sharing and hearing our stories also helps to broaden the view of those around us. Personal growth, resilience, as we listen to each other, we learn a sense of purpose. Develop empathy, sharing personal stories, and expressing our true and whole selves. And this commitment to flourishing is grounded. These are in our commitment to equity, inclusion, sharing, and hearing our stories. Also understanding each other's stories, our personal growth. As we listen to each other, we learn, brings us together as a community. And he would have said, and I'm grateful to be here tonight. And he's sad he's not here tonight, but I'm very grateful I'm here. So thank you to Vice President Yvette Alex Asenso, and for your leadership, and to Abigail Leader for organizing this event, and all the others who I'm sure contributed. And of course, thank you to tonight's storytellers for their candor and your courage, and thanks for the privilege of being here. So.
Hello, my name is Tyler, and I'm Rory. As we're all gathered here in one space tonight, we must intentionally acknowledge that the state and the University of Oregon was built off of colonization, deception, and exploitation of people of color, specifically the people of the Kalapuya Alihi traditional indigenous homeland. And due to treaties in 1851 and 1855, the United States government violently dispossessed Kalapuyan people of their indigenous homeland and forcibly moved them to the coast reservations of Western Oregon. Today, Kalapuyan descendants are members of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde community and of the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians of Oregon.
To learn more about the history of Indigenous peoples and the land we find ourselves upon, you can visit native-land.ca. We express our respect for all federally recognized tribal nations of Oregon and all other displaced Indigenous peoples who call Oregon their home. The people of these tribes continue to make important contributions to our community and are thriving and surviving with us today.
Okay, we are now going to jump into your first adventure of Intertwined. You're gonna turn to somebody that you haven't spoken to before. And one person's gonna be the storyteller, and the other person's gonna be the listener. The storyteller is gonna tell a short story of how they got here today. And the listener's just gonna listen. Make sure you introduce yourselves. You have 60 seconds. Excuse me.
We love that you're excited.
Yes, that was some good energy in the room. Y'all all participated, 100 points. Now, the listener is gonna tell the storyteller what they remember from their story. You have 30 seconds, go.
Let's bring it back together again.
Okay, now we're gonna switch. So the listener is now the storyteller. You're telling a short story of how you got here. You may begin. Alright. Hello.
Bringing it back together again.
This will be the last part of this activity. The listener, please repeat everything you remember that the storyteller is telling.
Amazing. I am so excited that y'all are so excited to hear stories, and that's exactly what we're here to do tonight. But before we begin, I would like to make a note that our stories tonight do include some topics that can elicit trauma responses within those who have experienced them. This is including, but not limited to, racism, sexual violence, child abuse, and mental health struggles. We encourage you to lean into this space with curiosity and compassion while also taking really good care of yourself.
Lastly, we would like to acknowledge Violence erupts from ignorance that grows from hurt. We remind everyone to remember that their voice holds power, and we encourage everyone to remember who they have promised to serve. Violence, abuse, rape, bombing, and genocide of any identity is absolutely unacceptable.
So many are in pain right now, and if you could do anything at all to ease someone's at least a little bit, you could do so with your voice.
But how does one know when to use their voice? Listening. Listening leads to relationships. Listening leads to learning. Listening leads to how we grow, how we understand, and how we come to new truths. We listen to stories. Tonight, you'll notice that the art of storytelling goes so much more beyond the ears. And you'll notice as your listening goes from your mind down to your heart, creating a full body experience. There will be a brief intermission halfway through the show.
These stories once erased, silenced, or never given the time, tonight we hold space for those who have been hidden from the light.
Members of the audience, I stand before you today, a humbly, inconceivably, utterly gorgeous person. Now, I know my beauty might be too much for some of you, and if that's you, the exit's right there. Now, I don't mean to be facetious, but I truly believe I'm gorgeous. When I met a former partner of mine, those were their first words. You are gorgeous. This story is about the intoxicating rush of a new relationship and the pain of withdrawal from an ending. Movement 1, euphoria. I love to be flattered, but more than being flattered, I love to be known, to have my inconsistencies and idiosyncrasies cataloged and kept sacred in another's mind. But when the former partner and I talked, they made an effort to know me. My fears, my joys, my highly specific food opinions regarding tomatoes. Nothing was off limits. What's your relationship like with your parents? Do you like flowers? Are you a top or a bottom? What's your favorite dessert? What would you dream to do with all the money in the world? It was those kind of questions that made us feel so connected. However, it was illusory. We didn't really know each other. At least not by textbook definitions, we'd never met. But damn, it didn't feel that way. We would meet eventually, and it'd be awkward, but a passing kind of awkwardness. We were so close, they were comfortable enough to ask me, will you help me move into my dorm? And I obviously said yes. That was the sign I'd been waiting to hear. There was a connection, but being relied on meant it was something real. Movement 2, reality. We were walking outside the front of the music building when I had a horrifying realization. I've never held hands in public. Never been close to someone in that way. I've never done gay shit before. So we're walking side by side, and it's good, but not good enough. Then we're arm in arm. Frisky, I know, but it's good. So they stick out their hand, trying to hold mine. And I can feel anxiety flare up from my feet to my chest. And blood rushes to my face, burning so hot it eats away at the air I try to breathe. In Texas. And I'm closeted, and I'm scared. And I'm checking to see if anyone is watching me. And in my head, I hear my mother say, if you ever act like those people, I will knock your Movement 3. Withdrawal. We broke up a week later. 6 in the morning, I'm on Instagram. My algorithm has realized that I'm in Oregon, so it shares with me all these cute gay couples doing things out in the wild. I've wanted it desperately. So we had a running list of places we wanted to go, parts of Oregon they wanted me to see, the outdoorsy things that I, a quintessential city boy, would never dream of doing. It was our list, but it was their name. I just wanted to participate fully in who they were. I saw this cute gay couple hiking together. They looked so in love. Their hands were intertwined, their steps in sync. They were so in tune with each other and the nature around. You would have thought that they had sprouted from the earth that they were walking on. It was so beautiful how perfect it looked. Share. And in return, they responded, I want this, but not right now. I don't have time for a relationship. I heard, I don't have time for you. And that's what they meant. They killed me. They were my roots. I felt safe. I felt loved. I felt at home because we had a good thing going. I cared. And they didn't. Weeks walked by and I didn't notice. Movement 4. Healing. A month passed and I was just slightly more okay. We'd had something real, but it was over. I realized I could feel what I felt for other people. It ended too early for I love you, but not so early that there was no love. There was something untold, however you describe what I felt.
Good evening. I retired recently from the University of Oregon. My untold story is that going to college for me was a fluke. In the middle of my senior year in high school, at the Kamehameha School for Children of Hawaiian ancestry only, I cut class and hid in the auditorium, which I found empty, unlocked, obviously, and dark. I crawled in the last row of the middle seats and lay down. Of course, within minutes, the auditorium front doors busted open. I froze, sat up slowly to check on the intrusion, and made instant eye contact with my high school football coach entering the auditorium with a group of people. I was convinced I was busted. But to my great surprise, my coach waved for me to join him at the front of the auditorium. There, he introduced me to a college football coach who was on a recruiting visit. As a tall, skinny, shy kid, I was not a target recruit. I never entertained the idea of going to college. My dad, a man of few words, of pure Hawaiian descent, with skin as black as night, and a foot shorter than his 2 adopted sons, had determined that college was simply not an option for me. He found it laughable. His nickname for me was Big Head. horizon I envisioned for myself was to serve Honolulu's finest as a policeman or a fireman, like my favorite Hawaiian uncles. For a kid growing up in the 1950s in Honolulu, in Kalihi, that was the horizon. Kalihi, a neighborhood of high-rise housing projects in Honolulu that reflected the low income, that reflected the racial melting pot of the working class Ohana. Families that arrived from all over the world to work the plantations, the pineapple fields, the sugar cane, and of course, to service the hotels and what to eat. Growing up in Kalihi, which means the edge, I had a fondness for my neighbor, Mr. Oba. He was a father figure to my twin brother, John, and me. As a tugboat driver, Mr. Oba was always around, until he wasn't. He had a great sense of humor, explained the birds and the bees to us in colorful adolescent detail, and extolled the virtues of an astounding world that existed just beyond the edges of the volcanic rock we lived on. As a freshman in high school, I became intrigued with the idea of learning to speak Japanese to honor Mr. Oba. I imagined myself mimicking the distinctive guttural voice of the famous Japanese actor, 1950s actor, Toshiro Mifune, when I surprised Mr. Oba with my newly acquired speaking fluency in his native tongue. But to do so would require special permission from Kamehameha schools. You see, in my freshman year in high school, I was placed in section 9-6, close to the bottom of the academic koi barrel at Kamehameha. Unlike my colleagues in sections 9-1 and 9-2 who are college bound, they could choose any class to take. The knuckleheads in section 9-6 required special permission from our class counselor, Mrs. Wise. After all, what value would knuckleheads gain from reading Shakespeare or speaking a language other than the kind of pidgin we speak in the islands, you know what I mean? So when I asked Mrs. Wise if I could take Japanese, she looked at me and, with a direct and casual response, said, "Ed, you're too stupid to take Japanese." Apparently, Mrs. Wise, because she was Mrs. Wise, she knew about my big head and the lethal sentence it imposed on me. When I think about those days, that day, almost 60 years ago, when I took refuge in my high school auditorium, I'm reminded of a lovely but often overlooked soliloquy in Shakespeare's Hamlet. To wit, we defy augury. There is special providence in the fall of a sparrow. If it be now, 'tis not to come. If it be not to come, it will be now. If it be not now, it will come. The readiness is all. So as big head of section 9-6, too stupid to take Japanese, I was the only member of my Kalihi Ohana to graduate from college with a degree in English literature, including a thesis on John Keats, the 18th century romantic poet, to earn a PhD from this remarkable university, to earn early tenure with promotion from Purdue University, to speak at the White House, and to return to the University of Oregon to establish and direct a research center that studies serious academic learning problems. and to retire as Dean Knight Professor after 30 years at the University of Oregon. So to Mr. Oba, to Brendan Johnson, to my Ohana, to all my mentors along the way, including those here at the University of Oregon, and especially Dr. Doug Carney. Indeed, the readiness is all. Aloha, and arigato gozaimasu.
Malicious and slanderous gossip. I didn't know what those words meant at the time, but I knew it was bad by how they rolled off the tongue. I tried to speak up in that meeting. I tried to explain it was a misunderstanding, but my mom cut me off and said, "Anna, stop talking. No one here believes you." We were in my principal's office 2 days after my 13th birthday, and the day before the holiday break. I was being suspended for the first time in my life. It was a 3-day suspension that was to be continued after the vacation. Why don't they believe me? Am I a bad person? Will this follow me around forever? I had 2 weeks to dwell over this punishment. It wasn't a typical rumor. It was not a harsh comment about a classmate spread throughout the hallways. I honestly didn't know what it was. At 12 years old, it's difficult to articulate yourself in a way where an adult can understand you, especially when your home state views sex education as taboo. What I was trying to report was grooming. But why should a 12-year-old know what grooming is? At my middle school, there was a teacher everyone knew and loved. He wasn't like other teachers, okay? He'd swear occasionally, crack jokes, and sometimes he would bring treats to class. I got to know him better in 6th grade when he was the advisor of a club I joined, and then he helped me when I fell behind in math. At the time, I didn't have many friends, but he felt like one to me. He was the first adult besides my parents whom I felt close to. I could tell this was true for some of my other peers as well. Being this close to someone more mature made us feel like we were finally becoming adults. We weren't aware that his bringing food to class or allowing us to be so personal with him was creating a bill in his mind. A bill he would want all of us to repay. On the first day of 7th grade, I had just gotten a haircut. It was a pretty bold chop, I won't lie. I saw him standing with a group of other girls and decided to approach them. "What do you think of my haircut?" I asked. I was mainly searching for his opinion. They all glanced at each other. Yeah, it's cool," he said through a chuckle. They then burst out laughing. "You're making fun of me." I was suddenly self-cautious of the haircut I was once excited about. No, I would never make fun of you. I would make fun of this girl right here," he said, and then proceeded to mess up the hair of the girl he was standing next to. I felt weird, uncomfortable, and oddly enough, jealous. The bond we once had in 6th grade had disappeared over the summer. He had a whole new audience to impress now, so our relationship started to change. He would call me out for making a mistake, he would exclude me from the secret lunches, and he would constantly call home and tell my parents that I was a problem. It seemed like he got what he needed from me, and now I was just a toy to play with. There's a new kind of pain when the person who you once confided is the one perpetrating the harm. What did I do? What changed his mind about me? I mean, was it the haircut? That year, I noticed he was drawn to a close friend of mine. She became quiet and was always by his side. Seeing this made me realize I needed to speak up. I wasn't sure what was happening between them, but my gut was telling me to reach out to my friend. When I did, she had told him what I said, and the next thing I knew, I was in the principal's office being suspended. No questions asked. Even after this punishment, he would continue to harass me. He was very calculated and knew how to keep his behavior a secret, and discredit anyone who tried to stop him. I was isolated, terrified, depressed, and extremely invalidated. I began to question my reality. If other people said it didn't happen, then did it? In my junior year of high school, I finally had an answer to that question. I remember the moment. I was in the driveway after school with my sister when my dad called us into the house urgently. He was on the phone, but put it on his shoulder when we walked in. He said, "Anna, we need to go to the police station." Wait, hang on. But then didn't tell me why for 2 excruciating minutes. After thinking of every possible bad thing I had done up until that moment, he then told me that that teacher had been arrested on child rape charges. Detectives found out about my suspension, and they wanted to talk to me. I was finally vindicated. He was arrested. I was shocked. I honestly never thought he would be caught. I felt relief, yeah, but then also anger. All of a sudden, somehow, I became a hero. There were articles, interviews, and I was asked to speak at events. When people found out about what 12-year-old me had done, they used words like courageous, brave, inspiring, and leader. I had adults tell me that my speaking up gave them the courage to do so themselves. I saw an entire community rally behind survivors in the aftermath. But only after he was finally caught. I had spoken the truth 5 years before. Why didn't anyone just listen to me in the first place? It's not that my story was untold, it just was not believed.
other rituals that raised many eyebrows. On the ninth hour of wedding, that was slowly taking me away from my family and placing me into the groom's family, we were building towards the most symbolic event of any Nepali Hindu wedding. A moment when a groom places a sindoor on the bride's forehead, a mark that signifies that you're married. And at that moment, as I was inhaling the joy and feeling the relief that I'm finally married, I hear someone say, "Kasti ho yo?" यस्तो मोमेन्टमा सबै रुन्छन्। हेरलाई हाँसिरहेछे, धेरै बोल्ने, गफार्ने. Meaning, this is supposed to be the most emotional day of your life. Look at you, you're not crying. You are too talkative to be a bride, no emotions. Paused, and I looked around, wondering who would have said that. It was the priest. Scared and in a bit of shame, I looked around again, wondering if anyone else had heard what I just heard. Thankfully, no one did. I exhaled in relief. For a moment, I thought you were joking. Would anyone say something like that to a bride? Shame her for not crying? But his comment started to sink into my inner thoughts, and I started to question myself. Why wasn't I crying? I got confused. Should I have cried? Should I feel happy or sad, proud or guilty? I continued questioning myself. I know I cried when my cousin Susanna Didi and Asta Diju got married. I know I cried when other women around me got married. Why wasn't I crying? Am I an emotionless, heartless bride? Am I an emotionless, heartless daughter? I saw my dad sobbing at the corner. He looked more emotional than I was. But why wasn't I crying? That day, it was not only the priest who wanted to see me cry. The photographer said he wanted a perfect shot and wanted me to look emotional. And even the cab driver delayed our bidai, farewell, literally to let me cry. And just like that, I spent one of my most beautiful days in confusion, feeling happy but sad, proud but guilty, empowered but helpless. I've been feeling so wonderful, but after that statement, I lost connection to my own wedding. I don't remember anything after. As a Nepali woman, I knew there were gender expectations, but I never realized they applied to me. My parents had done a great job at shielding me from patriarchy. My mom often challenged the status quo and decided to have a single girl child and asked countless of times, "Ani chora, what about sons?" I saw the gender role reversal at my home. My mom used to earn for the family, and my dad stayed at home taking care of me. But here I was, at my wedding, internalizing the priest statement. It took me 3 years to unpack my wedding pictures. And 3 years after my wedding, when I think about it now, I wonder if I would change anything about how I expressed my emotion that day. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I had the right to feel the sadness of leaving my home or joy of my wedding. All of my right in the feeling, however I felt that day. And all of my emotions are my emotions.
Today is a day of duty, and I am dutiful. WHO, CDC.gov, websites, advisories, briefings. No guidance escapes my vigilance. No precaution is beneath my volition. Unemployment skyrocketing. I spare when sparing is sparse, as I'm still employed essentially. I ration my reserves. Each bag of tea to each sheet of TP has a designation in this wartime effort. I am a law-abiding citizen. So today, still buoyed above bedlam, I awaken to a pantry in poverty. Refrigerator as empty as my stomach. Cupboards as exhausted as my stamina for social media. I fashion a mask and fancy a trip to the grocer. Venturing outside for the first time in a fortnight, I take in unconditioned air, so clean, so crisp, as cool as morning dew. I desperately desire to prolong this, take my time, but I dare not dawdle, not while out and about. It isn't illegal, not quite, but a breach of social contract all the same. And I am all too accustomed of the unwritten rules that color consequence. So today, I enter this odd structure, strangely showing signs of sentience. The automatic sliding doors startle me, and the smells of consumable commodity tickle my flaring nostrils. All around me are the masked, revealing a certain surreality. As I engage the task at hand, I know exactly what I need and commence my mission with verve. Weaving in and out and through, like a practiced pilot on a flight path ingrained in instinct, my movements are swift, purposeful, precise. My quarantine hiatus did not dull the familiarity of rote routine. And after all, I am a regular. I know these aisles like the aisles of my broken but earnest commitments to text you back. By the way, I hate you up tonight. I know the back of the store like the back of my hand. I can tell you about Quincy, the cashier from Queens, who moved here to move on. Quincy, who fell in love again with the love of their born-again life at a Hendricks Park community cleanup. Or Stephanie, who stocks shelves because she's shy, and won't talk to anyone except for me. Sadly, they don't seem to be working today. I do hope they're okay. So today, progress is my basket filling as though seeking to satisfy its own hunger. 4 minutes in, and by the time I reach the 4th aisle, I'm declining the 6th. Can I help you find something? Jesus Christ. 2 of which come from the same employee 3 aisles ago. I move on, but I can't move away. You know what's funny? How do we get away with all this talk about the lack of black leaders when we are followed so faithfully? Awareness flares, anxiety grows, my movement slows, until I am suddenly frozen, inanimate, in the right aisle, but always the wrong lane. Excuse me, do you have what you need? Barks the foggy-goggled, green-aproned embodiment of America's made-again greatness. We really do need you to be in and out of the store quickly. I do hope you understand. I sure did. I sure do. This is a moment. The moment. The store shrinks, walls, floor, ceiling, work concave and convex in sync with my hyperventilation. It's not that I have forgotten who I am and what, where I am and why. It's that I made a choice against obvious odds. You think I'm exaggerating, but I assure you, the scenario is sufficiently statistical. The spotlight's heat burns with a particular contempt. A familiar sweat courses its way down my brow and neck. The cloth mask asphyxiates, or maybe I've forgotten to breathe. Look, to be clear, it is not fear that seizes. It is an ancestral anger. I still don't know how I know the restraint I show. I mean, am I not in Rome, doing as y'all do? I'm trying to figure out where I roamed wrong. Or when. Was it entering the store? Or entering this timeline? Was it bringing my own bag? Or being born? The dawning is upon me. Naive, empathic, altruistic me. Hypervigilant, humanitarian, guidance-following, do-gooder, civic responsibility me. Me in regular pants. Me in a simple, horizontally striped polo shirt, me armed with nothing but a quarter-filled basket, a bag, and a cell phone. Me, me, me. Don't you see? Aggressive and threatening large black male acting suspiciously and disrupting the peace. Don't you see me now? I emanate a threat not even a pandemic could preclude, nor a Quincy, nor a Stephanie, nor a compliant face covering, nor a reusable bag in an eco-conscious, eco-friendly environmentalist's Eugene. So today, as I go about my business, society goes about it too. Today, I'm reminded, yes, COVID is contagion. Yes, and our sickness is the flu of me and you. Racism is the virus without a cure.
Hello, that was half of the show. Now, you've heard these stories, and we don't want to trap them inside our bodies. So, on the count of 3, I'd like us all to take a deep breath. Okay. 1, 2, 3. There's food. Please use the bathroom. And talk to your neighbors.
carrying a canoe over my head for over 2 miles. Thank you very much. They gave me opportunities to perform, to sing, to dance. They took chances on me and taught me to lead. They invested in my learning and taught me to share gratitude and grace, even while my family was falling apart. Without the support of this community, I wouldn't have had the stability to get an education, let alone get a PhD or become a professor. Ironically, my career's made it so I don't fit as well in the community. Sometimes I feel like I don't really fit anywhere. Fast forward to getting a job at the University of Oregon. A career coach pulled me aside and said, hey, if you're practicing LDS, you might want to talk to HR for protection, just in case. What? I blew her off. Then, the day before I started, at the UO-BYU game, the crowd began chanting, "Fuck the Mormons! Fuck the Mormons!" Yeah. Welcome to the University of Oregon. Despite my best efforts to calm myself, I was still on edge the next day when I met my colleagues for the first time. But I get it. BYU has been blasted on social media for its treatment of LGBTQ students. Like many institutions, its policies have flip-flopped, first giving LGBTQ students hope, then cruelly marginalizing them. I haven't told anyone at UO that I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints until tonight. I don't want anyone to assume that they know my values, especially when I'm teaching sensitive topics in the classroom. And my daughter is queer. I just met her new girlfriend for the first time. She's beautiful, motivated, talented. She's got this loud, generous laugh, and she's been good for my daughter. Something that hurts more than anything in my life right now is that my gift of faith, of community that's meant so much to my life, my wholeness, has been hurtful to her. And at times, a weight that she's had to drag through life. Some have suggested that if I really loved my daughter, I would walk away from the LDS faith. Others think that I shouldn't fully accept my daughter. No way. I'm behind her 100%. Love is a messy, messy business. Few of us get it right consistently. Jesus was a radical teacher, a long-haired hippie. But if you really look at how he lived his life, he challenged us to look beyond codes, rules, institutions, and see the humans. Love God, your neighbor, yourself. The message has transformed my life again and again. And after 50 years of practicing, I still get it wrong. I can't tell you how many times I almost pulled out of tonight's event. I didn't want you to see me as a hater, a Karen. I want you to see my heart. I've spent too many years showing only part of myself to any given audience, split like those paintings. So I'm here on this stage tonight because I'm not walking away from the messiness. Now, more than ever, we need to do the hard work of sticking with each other and holding space for all of our stories.
tell our beloved ones how much we love them. We don't tell them how thankful we are for having them in our lives. But today, I feel it's the time to say thank you to some very important people in our life. Mom and Dad, I want to thank you both. I want to tell you that you are the best Ami and Abu in this world. I love you both. Not just because you are my mom and dad, but because what you both did is incredible. It is something not only me, but this world is proud of. I want to tell you both that the way you two navigated the challenge of having 3 blind children out of 6 is remarkable. I feel sad for all those times when you were told that your children should not be sent because they suffer from an incurable disease called retinitis pigmentosa. I remember all those you were made to feel embarrassed because of her disability. I still remember the time when I heard both of you sobbing in your bedroom because of the uncertainty that surrounded the future of your children. That day, I felt life was meaningless. But you stood for us. You stood and you advocated for us when the school was not granting us admission, and you encouraged them to give us a chance, and we surprised them with our performance. I remember the time. It was really hard going through this time, but you stood by us, and I thank you both for that. Maji, I remember the time when you persuaded Dad, Uncle, and everyone around us that your children's education is as important as it is for anyone else in this world. And when you decided that you're going to make your children self-sufficient and independent. Abudi, your presence was more comforting than anything else. You did every effort to take us to all social gatherings because you wanted us to be confident. You were mindful that we are not kept away from the society like thousands of other blind children. I still remember you saying, "Dunia jhukti hai, jhukane wala chahiye. World bends, we need someone to bend it." And I remind this phrase all the time when I feel lost. And to my brothers and sisters, I want to thank you all because you have been always willing to help me whenever I needed you, whether it's a day or night, hottest or coldest day of the years, busy or free, you always have time for me. Bajo, my elder sister, I want to thank you, and I remember all those nights when you stayed up all the night for me, because next day was my exam, and you were reading the books loud to me, those which were inaccessible for me to read at now. Bhaiya, my eldest brother, I want to thank you for all those times when you took me to the bus stop in the middle of the night, and you spent the whole day in the market with me because I was traveling or I wanted to buy a few things, and you never said a word of complaint ever. And to Professor Shamsur Rahman, I can never forget you. You were the first educated blind person my family ever met. You were the person who told us how to live this life differently but equally. You told us how to get education and how to be successful in this life. And I want to thank you, sir, for being the one that I and my family needed the most. And to the doctor, I can never forget you. I don't remember your name, but but I can never forget you. What you said to my mom, and it changed our lives forever. When you responded to my mom's query about her education, and when you said, "Oh lady, are they going to beg to make their living if you're not going to make them, or if you're not going to get them education?" That was the day when my parents decided that they were going to educate us. And here I'm standing today, talking to these wonderful people, thanking you for what you did that day. I want to thank a number of other people, like my friends, colleagues, and teachers. I wish I had more time. But I wish that everyone had some people like you. As humans, we have a power to make and a power to drink. And I'm happy that you use this power to make my life. I thank you all. I thank you all.
It was the perfect sunny end of a summer day, but I didn't care. I couldn't feel any of it. I felt distant from the world around me, like I wasn't even there, and I was really not looking forward to trying this whole therapy thing again. But if you know how university counseling centers are, I'd be waiting another month if I canceled. So I went and I sat on a couch in a warm, dim room, and I told her what I could remember. How some days I felt like I was on top of the world, and on other days my legs felt like lead. I finally stopped having something else to blame, so I'm here. At some point she turned away and Googled something, much like I used to do when I was 12 and trying to diagnose myself, except she has a degree that makes it okay. And the interrogation began. Do you often find yourself talking a lot, loud and fast? Always, I told her, like I am with you right now. My friends joke that my rap would be Eminem, and I've made several friends just because they heard me from across the room. Does it ever feel like a compulsion, or like it's difficult to stop? I tried to explain how I usually won't stop talking unless I feel like I'm being too much. Then I shut down. I don't say a word. That's when my friends worry. Do you often find yourself flying suddenly from one idea to the next? And I wonder, does she mean literally every interest I have? Every the many short-lived hobbies, tools, and art supplies I've barely touched? Or does she mean how for weeks I could not stop obsessing over a new engineering course I wanted to create, but I forgot about it overnight? And she asked, do you ever feel like you're thinking really fast? And I told her how it usually feels like my mind has 100 tabs open and there's audio coming from all of them. How sometimes when I sit outside, I feel like I'm consciously processing every blade of grass, every color, every noise, every person simultaneously. But that's normal, right? You often find yourself developing extremely strong, almost irrational feelings over short periods of time. And I asked her if my previous relationship counted, how we met at band camp, and we started dating 3 days later, and after 2 weeks, I was in love, without a doubt. Do you regularly experience high energy with less need for sleep or food? And I thought this one has to be a joke. That's literally how you get into this school. Yeah, sometimes I don't want to sleep, and I forget to eat for a couple of days, except my mochas. In the past 2 weeks, how often have you experienced severe anxiety? Okay, yeah, so I told her about how during one breakup I couldn't even keep a salad down, and how during my summer abroad I had to keep leaving the class to hyperventilate in the bathroom. Severe depression. Who doesn't, am I right? then 2 weeks later, it all felt normal again. Actually, it felt fantastic. I just needed to readjust. And then 2 weeks after that, I felt broken again, skipping lectures to have panic attacks. And then she gave me this label. It wasn't the label I was expecting that my entire family seems to have. This label was bright and dark, heavy and light at the same time. It encompassed how I thought and talked so fast, how I felt and loved so strong and so fast, how I cried so deeply and the pain was shaking in my bones. It held the vibrance and the dullness of the world around me. It was the light breeze and weighted blanket taking turns on my mind. The cycles of feeling like I could walk on water and then like I was drowning and no one could see or save me. I walked into that appointment looking for an explanation for the bad, and I was walking out with a label that encompassed everything I thought I knew about myself. It was my superpowers, my empathy and eagerness to stay up all night being productive. It was my kryptonite, the weight that kept me in bed and the anxiety that paralyzed me. What do you do when your superpower is the same thing as your kryptonite? That day I hid. I left her office and I went directly into the one-room bathroom outside of the counseling center, and I collapsed against the wall, wrapped up in this label, not knowing where I ended and my new bipolar diagnosis began. I couldn't stay there forever. Eventually, I got up, my life went on, and I stopped looking for the line between me and my bipolar. I accepted that I will wear this label forever. I will have bipolar disorder forever. It's just another part of my identity. But when I applied for PhD programs, they told me not to talk about it. When I applied for grants, they tell me not to talk about it. Like, I have to hide the superpowers I've harnessed and the kryptonite that I will always endure, because the stereotype of being an unpredictable flight risk is more significant than my story of resilience. And so I stand here about to finish the second year of my PhD, and just after winning 3 years of funding, thinking a lot about that one of those first questions that she asked me that day. Do you often find yourself talking a lot and loud? Always.
Dear Mama, thank you for the recipe that you passed down to me. The recipe on how to utterly destroy your daughter's life. The recipe goes like this. For a solid base, start with a thick layer of your own unresolved trauma. Preheat your chaos with an absolutely toxic, unhealthy, abusive, and completely unstable relationship with a sad excuse for a man. Dice up your inability to love and connect to ensure that you are completely unprepared to mentally, physically, emotionally care for multiple children. Slice up your skin in one of your many suicide attempts, but be sure to make sure that your daughter sees. I was at school when it happened, but the story goes, when the lady with the badge arrived, you turned her away. You called her a bitch as she stood where the 10 stairs met the door. It took 3 calls from Granny, from my aunt, from the school. 3 calls to Child Protective Services to finally get someone to investigate. But when
when they came and snatched us away, I was swimming. No, I was drowning in a sea of utter confusion. Roil your daughter's pain and suffering with a one-way ticket to, you guessed it, folks, foster homes. Toss your kids around from placement to placement. Every 6 months, a staff member would gather us to discuss the happenings of our case. You could get us back. You just had to successfully complete a rehabilitation program. Every 6 months, I was hopeful. And every 6 months, you let me down. You would go for 2, maybe 3 days, and then the cycle would begin again. Microwave your daughter's feelings of abuse, resentment, and neglect. Knead in a few family holidays where you try to pretend to be our mom. And for a little extra spice, mince in a little, I don't believe you, he's so nice, when I finally admit that my stepdad touched me. Don't rinse, but be damn sure to repeat. 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 Fuck that. I'm burning this recipe. I'm tossing out the book. I'm rewriting my own destiny, my own recipe. Mom, I'm not afraid of you anymore, and the fucked up shit you put me through doesn't have power over me any longer. I'm writing a new recipe for my babies. One where I slather myself in therapy, I do the work. You are my children. My burden isn't yours to carry. I fold in just a bit of admitting my own mistakes and trying real hard to learn from them because every day I'm trying to be a better person for you. I fold in a layer of my commitment to you. I promise you, even if mommy and daddy don't work out, we'll work together to give you the most loving life. I swirl in a gallon of financial stability while trying real hard to be present because truly, you are the gift. And I will always, always teach you to talk about the hard things, no longer relying on conceal, don't feel. And for a little extra swag, I'll show you I can make it all the way to the top. An abused, neglected, former foster kid from the motherfucking hood. I'm gonna get this PhD. Watch me rewrite this recipe. I'm claiming our new legacy. For me, my kids, for their kids, for generations to come. This is my recipe on how to utterly destroy generational bullshit by Audra Faye Johnston Samara. Thank you.
On the count of 3, I would like us all to take a big deep breath together. We invite you to reach your arms up to the sky to allow for the fullness of our emotions and reactions to flow into spaces of growth. 1, 2, 3. The people you hold closest, the people sitting next to you, the stranger you pass on the side of the road, we are all carrying untold stories. Perhaps we can use this as a bridge to bring more love, authenticity, courage, and empathy. Thank you for bearing witness to Intertwined 2024. a few important things. There's a QR code within the program which we would really appreciate you using to give any feedback or suggestions. And if you're at all interested in being involved with Intertwined 2025, please find Abigail or Tyler after the show, or check the emails on our blog. And with that, let's give one final round of applause to Intertwined Untold.